We are going to be having an interview with a doctor who has extensive years in studying human activities, migration, reactions when it comes to host communities and their guests. And then also, most recently, the issues that happen in South Africa with regard to xenophobia. And he's joined us in studio. Let me introduce Dr. Leonard Suransky. He is the head of international relations with Webster University, which is currently they have a branch here in Ghana. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us. Yes, good to have you join us. This okay? Bad, yeah. You did quite well with that. All right. To start with, Webster University. You had a lecture there yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the university.
So we've got a new campus. We're 100-year-old last year.
Oh.
We've got 100+ campuses, mainly in the States. So our headquarters in St. Louis.
Okay.
But we have 4 universities in Europe, and we've got 1 here in Ghana. 2 years old, still a little baby.
Yeah.
We're very happy to be in Africa. I'm a South African, so I've been pushing that they bring a campus here, and it's starting. And we're happy to be here, and I gave a public talk yesterday on the topic, xenophobia and migration.
Wonderful. All right. So, well, I have been to the university myself. That's Webster University.
Yes.
Yes,
good.
for a lecture. I enjoyed it. Looking forward to going there over and over again. But now let's come to the substantive issue of xenophobia and migration.
Yeah.
You had a lecture there on this particular issue yesterday. What is xenophobia to the average person? If you say xenophobia, what does that mean?
Yeah, right. So xenophobia, the definition is a fear of what is different, a fear of the foreigner, a fear of foreign things, of foreign ways, and a hatred sometimes of things that are foreign. And one part of the definition that is often left out is that it often involves action. And when we talk about action, we're talking about violence in the worst degree and even killing. So people are scared of people who are different to them, who don't fit, who eat differently, dress differently, pray differently, you know, the whole gamut. And they say, we don't want those people here. We have our culture, leave us alone, go somewhere else. And in our modern world, global world, people are moving.
Yes.
And so people are coming into other neighborhoods and cultures, and there is a clash, especially when people are poor, when people are impoverished. And my case study in South Africa is in our townships, which are our sort of not built areas. And I know you have many of them here in Ghana.
Yeah.
And there people feel invaded. They say, who are these people? They're coming, they're opening businesses here, shops. They're doing better than us. And then they get jealous. And there's envy. And there's a feeling of humiliation. How come these foreigners who've arrived here are doing so much better than us?
So it is the fear of the foreigner and foreign ways, or ways that are foreign or alien to their normal lifestyle.
Correct.
That is defined as xenophobia. Now, the particular case of South Africa, that is not the first time we are hearing of acts of xenophobia that turned violent and leading to the loss of lives. Can you help us with some antecedents?
Okay. Right. Look, we've had 2 flare-ups, major flare-ups, in 2008, 2015. 2008, 60-odd people were killed. 21 of them were South Africans, and in 2015, in KwaZulu-Natal, which is the Zulu area, 7 killed, 3 South Africans. And people focus on that. But the truth is that for the reasons that I mentioned, people are opposed to these foreigners coming from Africa, escaping violence, escaping dictatorships, escaping lack of food, lack of jobs, coming to a greener pasture. And South Africa represents a developed country within the African continent. And so the local people are saying, hey, government, stop this. You know, we don't like this. And in fact, the latest outbreak was precipitated by the king of KwaZulu-Natal, Zwelithini, who said, they must go. Government, take them away. he said terrible things. He said they're ants and they're lice. They must pack their bags and go. A day later, people were killing each other. And yeah, he felt that he had to speak out because his people were unhappy.
Yes. Why would you think that people in South Africa would attack fellow blacks? Because it makes sense to say a foreigner is someone who is mainly of a different skin color.
Yeah.
But in this case, there's a deliberate decision to attack blacks,
fellow Africans.
Yes, fellow Africans.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Okay, so here's where the embarrassment of the government comes in, because the ANC government says, come, come, come. And we believe 8 million people have come over in the last 20 years. And that is something like 8 to 10% of our population. So it's a large number.
Quite a huge number.
It's a large number. Some investigators say we've got the largest migration in the world. And the government's embarrassed because they say, you looked after us when we were in exile. You were kind to us, you were welcoming to us, you were hospitable. So we open our borders, come, come, come. But the people on the ground that are poor and that don't have much to show from 20 years of liberation are saying, stop, you know. And of course, they do see the differences. They say they talk differently.
Yeah.
So the word in South Africa is makweri-kweri, which is an attempt to get to the sound of the accent of the people who are coming in. They call it makweri-kweri. And it's not a nice word. It's saying these people are different to us. And then they complain. You know, they taking our jobs, they taking our women, you know, the usual thing.
Yeah.
Same kind of story in Europe today.
Okay.
People who are saying we don't want these refugees that are coming because they are moving into our neighborhood and changing what we have here. We don't like it.
And is it possible, is it ever possible that looking at the current world condition where people are moving, families are traveling, due to various reasons, top of the mind would be maybe issues of war and famine and all of that.
Yeah.
People are moving. Is it ever possible to say you're not going to allow people to come into a certain country? And in this case that they were saying the government should stop the people from coming in.
Right.
Is it possible?
Well, you see now we have that was a very good question that came up from one of our students last night. And he said, surely we must move beyond sovereignty of the nation state. That this is South Africa, and this is Ghana, and this is Mozambique, and this is Zimbabwe. Surely we must grow beyond that and say, look, we're all human beings, let people move. And in Africa, we know people have always moved.
Yes.
And before colonialism, the borders were porous, people, and they still are. Our borders in South Africa cannot be controlled. So people come across, and look, what the United Nations and the international law has achieved is that there are laws about asylum. If someone can be proven to be fleeing violence, to be fleeing political repression, then they're allowed to come, and you've got to look after them.
Okay.
So that's what's happening now with Mrs. Merkel in Germany. She's saying those that are really, honestly asylum seekers who cannot live and cannot go back to their countries, they can come. The others we're sending back, and they started sending them back over the weekend.
Okay. And from where you stand, you've been in South Africa, you've been in other parts of the continent of Africa. Do you think the recent hush or the recent calm in parts of South Africa where the xenophobia attacks were quite strong means that the issue is over?
No.
Is it over? It isn't.
No, it's not. And the tragedy is, and that's a difficulty here, I know Ghana a little bit, is that there aren't enough jobs. When people are economically happy, they will live with their neighbors and they will tell you we love them, we intermarry with them, we celebrate their festivals and they celebrate our festivals. When economic times get hard, then people start turning against each other. And it doesn't make any sense. So, you know, the biggest experience of that was the Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda. I mean, it was terrible. And people said, but they were our friends. My wife is a Tutsi. How can you come and kill her? I'm a Hutu. And when times are hard And
so economic hardship is an underlying factor.
It's very much a big factor. A fear that there can, like the people that have been moved now from Greece to Turkey, in the village where they're going, the people say, this is a tourist village. If you bring us, because they already brought 200 people, this is going to dirty up the beaches, dirty up the streets. People will not come here anymore. They'll be scared. And that destroys our economy. So that's the kind of thing that generates xenophobia and generates fear. People are fearful. And it's a very human response.
Right. Let's narrow the discussion and focus on Ghana. We have had our fair share of clashes between host communities and foreigners. And in this particular case, foreigners being Fulani herdsmen or nomadic herdsmen. Would you also describe that as xenophobia? Or probably is another type of it?
No, well, look, it's interesting because those herdsmen are coming here because their pastures to the north are no longer good. So they're doing what they've done for centuries or even millennia. They're moving where the pasture is good. But today we say this is the border of Ghana, and that is Togo, and it's not the same country. And you can't just come across the border here and start eating our grass and our... And the trouble, from what I understand, I'm not an expert on it, the trouble is that these pastures are hard-worked farms. And of course the cattle, I've seen pictures of the cattle coming in huge numbers. Yes. You know, they're 40, 50 cattle. And they will just ravage a farm in an hour. And the farmers are saying, well, that destroys my livelihood. Yeah. It's not different to those people in the Turkish seaside village who are saying, the tourists won't come. And here the farmer's saying, what am I supposed to eat? And so there's antagonism. Although Africa has been much more welcoming of this. It's only recently that we've had these strict borders, and they've never been very effective. And so that becomes xenophobia. And then people get angry and they say to their government, help us, do something, otherwise we will take it into our own hands. And we will kill back.
What's the best solution to resolving some of these issues? Is there one result that can solve all these?
No, there's never one result. Way to resolve any human issue. You know, human beings are complex and societies are complex. But what I say to my South African students and audiences is, you go a long way if our African people in the townships are feeling so angry to talk to them about it. And so I've got one story. So this last outburst of xenophobia was against Somalians who've come down. They're good businessmen. They work hard and they're prospering. And the guy who's got a little spaza shop, we call it, sort of usually in a container, and he sees the other guys doing better. And the guy, I've had a conversation where the Somali businessman will say, okay, we'll show you how to do it. You buy your food in bulk with a group of people like we do. You buy a truck together and you share the truck so you don't have big costs to bring the stuff to the township. And the African guy who was in this conversation said, we can't do that. Why not? Because we don't trust each other. That's what he said. What do you mean you don't trust each other? He said, look, not only don't we trust each other, but when I've got some money, my mother comes, my granny comes, my sister comes and says we need money for books, we need money for a wedding, and so on. And I can't save money the way they can. And the other thing is that Somalis open at 5 in the morning and close at 9 in the evening. Wow. And the South Africans say, listen, normally any shop in South Africa is 8 to 5. Yeah. By the time 8 o'clock comes, everybody's gone to work. So what can we do? Talk to them, get them to talk to each other, try and find a way out. One of the people sitting in the lounge with me said, we've got to set aside some land for the Fulani and say, okay, you're coming in now, don't go and rob our farmers, come here, it's an open area, there are trees, there's grass, bring your cattle here. one has to try and resolve these things, but it's hard when there's not enough to go around.
I see. Well, we are hoping that we never do get a recurrence of some of these xenophobic attacks, especially on the continent of Africa. But we would want to see, is there a major difference between what happens normally in Africa and then in Europe? Is there a difference?
I think the difference is that Europe is a much more sophisticated society.
Sophisticated.
Sophisticated, more industrialized, more ordered, and you know, it's got the laws, and it's got... So when a foreigner comes into Europe, they are documented. And they've got all these fancy machines, takes fingerprints, eye prints, everything, so they know who they are. We don't have that in Africa. If someone comes across the border, there's no one standing there to say, wait, before you cross the border, you've got to register here, and we've got to find out if you are perhaps an asylum seeker, in which case we are obligated to take you. We don't have that. But they're also very attractive to people. I said in my talk last night, the problem in the Middle East is that the Middle East is running out of water, and that is pushing people away. People are without water. We human beings can't live without water. We can't grow food without water. We can't survive, especially in Ghana. If you don't have a big bottle of water wherever you go, you're in trouble.
Dehydrate, true.
Right. So I think that's the pressure. So in a way, the reaction of the Europeans is exactly the same as the reaction of these people facing the Fulani or the people sitting in Soweto in South Africa. It's,
And for solutions that you mentioned, what role can a government play?
So you see, I said to you earlier that in the case of the South African government, they find it embarrassing. So our president, who's not in the best shape these days, has said, this is not our people, this is un-South African, these are criminals that are doing this. He's wrong. It's people on the ground who are frustrated, who are jealous, who aren't making ends meet. Governments, one of the things that our government is doing is that they give grants to people who are very poor, and that helps a lot. But ultimately, we've got to produce jobs. You know, we know that in South Africa. Our growth this year is going to be under 1%. That's disastrous. Whoa. We know that we can't employ the graduates from high school unless we're growing at 5%. And we're not doing well. So create jobs, and governments are not that good at creating jobs, but try and find investment. And you know, the world economy has been very bad for several years. I know that at Webster we've had trouble when our students say, but when we came here the CD was 3 CDs to the dollar. Now it's 4 CDs to the dollar. How do you expect us to pay?
True.
It's tough. So the global economy affects things too.
Okay. All right. So we have just been getting some education on xenophobic attacks, or generally xenophobia and migration. And clearly it is not just a problem in South Africa, but it looks like it's been quite a general issue. We were just speaking the thoughts of Dr. Leonard Suransky, who yesterday gave a talk at the Webster University about this particular topic. And, you know, maybe a few suggestions as to how not to have a recurrence of some of these problems with specific regard to xenophobia. We want to say a big thank you to you.
Thank you.
And hope to have you around some other time.
I would love to come.
Enjoy your stay in Ghana.
Thank you very much.
As long as you're here. All right.
Okay,
So
thank you.
that'll be it for this particular segment.